Hi everyone, my name is Aaron and welcome back to my channel. Just yesterday, for the first time in over 20 years, the city of Clearwater has selected a new city manager. The city manager position had been filled by Bill Horn for the last, I want to say 20 years, it might have been 21 years. And he was set to retire either this week or next week. And he tragically passed away of a heart attack a couple weeks ago. The search came down to 4 very highly qualified finalists. And this past Wednesday night, the city hosted an event with the 4 finalists where they all appeared on stage with the mayor and each took about 15 to 20 minutes fielding a series of questions. I want to show you a little highlight reel of how each one of the 4 finalists answered a question about how would you manage the relationship with the Church of Scientology. Let's take a look. The first candidate is Milton Dahoney, currently out of Phoenix. Here's how he answered the question.
Tell me, how would you propose to work with the Church of Scientology?
Well, I have done a lot of reading about it as an organization. Certainly, if you watch television, you're aware of some of its most famous members. In terms of the day-to-day functionality of the church, I don't really know exactly what that looks like, but they are a major institution within our community. They are a significant landowner in downtown Clearwater and perhaps other parts of the city. I have to believe that at some point there are places where our interests intersect. I have to believe that all of the stakeholders that have chosen to make Clearwater home are interested in seeing the city do well and seeing the city advance. And so I would propose to attempt to build a relationship that's based on where our common interests are. There are things that the city is trying to accomplish, things that the city needs to do, and I would hope that that would provide an opening to at least start to build a relationship. If that's not successful or we're not able to do that, I still believe Clearwater can and should be aggressive about going about its agenda, and I would be prepared to carry that out. But I'm, as a new person coming here to the community, would want to reach out not only to the Church of Scientology, but to the other community stakeholders to build relationships to help us advance Clearwater.
Not a great answer, really. There was 2 points that he made. Scientology is a major institution in our community, and Scientology is a significant landowner. Now, obviously, if we're talking about downtown Clearwater specifically, Scientology is a major landowner. I would actually take issue with calling the Church of Scientology a major institution in our community. In fact, I think that is one of the common misconceptions that I hope to be able to have the opportunity to do everything in my power to change. I will be starting a campaign for city council in a couple weeks, and one of the reasons I'm running is to change the perception of Clearwater and to change the perception of how much influence Scientology really has in Clearwater. To me, calling Scientology a major institution means something more than simply being a large landowner. Anybody with money can be a large landowner. Scientology is much smaller than a lot of people realize. In the entire world, there's about 30,000 members. Scientology tries to claim that there's 15,000 Scientologists living in Clearwater Incorporated. At the absolute most, there's maybe 2,500. It's probably closer to 2,000 Scientologists living in Clearwater. And that includes the 1,500 or so Sea Org members who live here in Clearwater and work at the Flag Land Base. Most of those guys are foreign nationals and can't even vote. The city of Clearwater has almost 120,000 citizens in it. So I don't know, maybe you guys can weigh in the comments section. Would having 2,000 members out of 120,000 citizens qualify as a major institution? It might be splitting hairs, but honestly, I feel like this is an example of where Scientology gets more credit than it deserves for the role that it plays in the community and for its size and influence in the community. I don't think I would ever, you'd never catch me referring to them as an institution. He says, I believe at some point somewhere our interests would have to intersect, and whereas I applaud the optimism, the fact is it's just not true. The interests of Scientology as it relates to Clearwater does not intersect with the interests of the actual leadership of the city of Clearwater in any way. And the more leaders we have who understand that, the better. He says he would like to think that all of the stakeholders who have made Clearwater their home would like to see the city succeed. The problem is that the question was, how do you propose working with the Church of Scientology, not how do you propose working with some random individual Scientologist. And maybe the key word here is stakeholder. Every individual Scientologist would be more than happy to live in a thriving, prospering, redeveloped downtown Clearwater, or Clearwater as a whole. Any individual Scientologist would, left to their own devices, love to see Clearwater succeed. That's not the problem. That's not the problem Clearwater has. The problem Clearwater has is with the Church of Scientology, of the flag service organization, and the flag land base. And the problem, when you try to extrapolate that conversation out to individual Scientologists, is that regardless of the needs and desires and hopes and dreams of individual Scientologists, at the end of the day, Scientologists have to do what the Church of Scientology tells them to do. So to just make an optimistic statement, or perhaps a somewhat naive statement that I would like to think that anyone who makes Clearwater their home, would like to see the city succeed, I can't really hold it against anybody, sitting up on stage, doing an interview for the city manager position. It's not like there's anything offensive about his statement. It's about what you would expect somebody to say. It's just that when it comes to being the city manager, I'm not looking for someone to say just what you would expect someone to say. I'm looking for someone to be very uniquely educated on and knowledgeable of the specific challenge that the Church of Scientology presents. And if someone's just going to be up there making some general sort of diplomatic statement that anybody could say about anything or anyone, not quite good enough for me. He does say that he hopes that there would at least be an opening to start building a relationship. At least he acknowledges that up until this point, having any kind of a relationship, much less a productive one, but with the city of Clearwater and the organization that is Scientology, has been a challenge, to say the least. So there was at least some recognition of that fact. All right, let's see how the next one did. This is Charlie Duggan. I believe he is the city manager out of Redlands, California. Let's see how he did.
How would you propose to work with the Church of Scientology?
Well, I don't want to say that they're exactly like other places I've been, but there are skills you acquire working with a big university like Auburn University. There are skills working in Marin County, which has a very involved populace, when you're trying to do things like set water rates and things like that. With working with the Church of Scientology, they're a large property owner here in town. And so what you try to do is find common ground where there's winning situations for both organizations. And quite frankly, you always want to make sure that someone doesn't benefit at your detriment. So you would go into it with open eyes, hoping that things can move forward. That's really about all you can do right now with them. They control the property, and so trying to make it a benefit to the community, hoping that they see the benefits too, I think would be a win-win.
So I think Charles acknowledges a bit more directly that up until now, Scientology has seemed to be totally incapable of understanding how doing things that would benefit the community would also be a benefit to Scientology itself. And to speak on that point for just a minute, in any normal sense, Scientology doing things to benefit the community would absolutely benefit Scientology. Even if you can't, and even though you can't join Scientology in Clearwater, it would absolutely benefit Scientology overall, and the flag land base in particular, to have a good, strong, beneficial, friendly relationship with the citizens of Clearwater and the elected leadership. I've explained in some of my recent videos why Scientology doesn't pursue strong, healthy, beneficial relationships with the community, but that's not to say that they couldn't. There's not a structural reason why it can't. It's totally up to Miscavige. If Miscavige wanted it to change, it would change, but he doesn't, so it won't. All right, let's see how the next finalist did. This is Jon Jennings, currently city manager of Portland, Maine.
How would you propose to work with the Church of Scientology?
Well, I've always, it's my career has been one where I have had to, frankly, work and deal with challenging situations. When I was a Assistant Attorney General at the Department of Justice, my job was to be on Capitol Hill every day. I was subpoenaed pretty regularly by members of Congress, had very, very tense it wasn't subpoenaing me personally. It was subpoenaing for issues. So for me, I've always dealt with difficult situations. I do relish those opportunities. In terms of the church, I've done an enormous amount of research on the church. I do believe that, at least I hope, there's an opportunity to have a dialogue with Mr. Miscavige, who, at least in my view, it seems like he is the person that does make all the decisions, particularly as it relates to the city. But at the end of the day, I got to be honest with you, Clearwater's got to move forward with or without the church on board for everything. I had mentioned earlier, US 19 is a glowing example of what happens when Clearwater takes on a project and does it incredibly well. The vision that years ago that you put into that corridor to make sure that you were anticipating what the state was going to do, and the zoning and the differences that you made, I think is an example of what we need to be focusing on if I'm selected as the city manager.
All right, so I love this. Right out of the gate, he comes out and basically calls Scientology a challenging situation. And here we have a guy who worked in the White House as an assistant attorney general. That means massive contacts in the federal government, including the Department of Justice. Contacts are everything. Scientology pays a mint for access to such contacts through lawyers and lobbyists. This guy already has them. Jon Jennings specifically did more research on the subject of Scientology than any of the other three candidates. Specifically, he's seen Going Clear. He's watched Leah Remini's Scientology in the aftermath. And I happen to know he's watched a bunch of videos on this channel. And I hope he's watching this one. He also acknowledges right there in his answer that Miscavige is the sole decision maker for Scientology and specifically the flag land base. This is something that Scientology strenuously denies. In the courts, Miscavige denies having any involvement whatsoever in the day-to-day management operations of the church, much less a specific church like the flag land base. And yet Jennings says right there, oh, by the way, with 3 Scientology reps sitting right there in the audience up near the front, says right there, it's pretty clear to him Miscavige makes all of the decisions. I loved it. And he says that at the end of the day, Clearwater just needs to move on with or without the church. That is perfect. That is the right mindset for the city manager of Clearwater. And probably one of the things I like the most about how he approached his answers to the questions is he didn't try to dilute his answers with some kind of mild praise for an organization that we all know basically operates like the mafia and is basically at war with the city of Clearwater. He didn't bother saying things like, oh, they're so influential, or they're an institution, or they own so much land, or they pay so much taxes. He didn't bother to try to pretty it up to make sure he wasn't offending them. He just answered the question matter-of-factly and put it on the table. All right, we have one remaining finalist. Let's see how he did with this question. This is Mr. Keith Moffett. He's currently out of Macon County, Georgia.
How would you work with the Church of Scientology if you were made city manager?
Well, I believe that everyone has a seat at the table. Being the education I learned today about that relationship, they are a heavy investor of property, the property owner downtown, so they, of course, will have an opportunity to be at the table, to be a part of the comprehensive plan for the downtown and the redevelopment and the community as a whole. So again, I'm very, I mentioned earlier, working in the Navy, I believe one of my skill sets is I can work with anybody. Being on a submarine, we had to fix problems out there. You couldn't just get your ball and go home. So I have that philosophy of working with people, even if they don't want to work with me. I believe that we can find a way to be respectable and collaborate and find common ground. The common ground we have here is that the property is in the same area, and we need to develop it to come to some consensus of what is best for the overall community. So I would be engaging in trying to build that relationship and working with that organization.
All right, so here again we have someone sort of putting a pretty face on it, starting with something like, everyone has a seat at the table. Well, you know what? Scientology is an organization that behaves just like the mafia and engages in widespread human trafficking in Clearwater, Florida. I would argue they don't actually have a seat at the table. They pay property taxes. Guess what? So does everyone else. The only difference is that Scientology only pays property taxes on about 20% of its property. And even with only paying property tax on about 20% of the property, it still makes them the largest tax owner in downtown Clearwater. But you know what it also makes them? The largest drain on tax revenues. You don't see other churches buying up massive amounts of property that they don't really need. And I understand that the Clearwater City government doesn't have the authority or the jurisdiction to tell Scientology whether it needs property. I'm just speaking factually. This isn't a matter of whether, this isn't a conversation about whether churches should pay taxes or not, or whether Scientology should be treated differently than other organizations. I'm just saying Scientology behaves differently than other organizations. Let's stop talking about how they should be treated and let's talk about how they behave. Mr. Moffett also begins his answer to this Scientology question by saying, based on the education I learned today. Education you learned today? Yeah, that's not good. So look, overall, he gave a nice, good, diplomatic answer, but really it was kind of one of these answers that doesn't really say anything at all. So like I said, the city council yesterday did pick a winner, and Jon Jennings got the job. Out of these 4 finalists, Jon Jennings was without question the worst option for Scientology. He is reportedly a little bit of a hothead, which I gotta be honest, I really like. And I do not see Mr. Jennings as being someone who's going to be very patient or take very kindly to putting up with Scientology's BS and getting the runaround and not getting answers to his questions. I don't anticipate him taking kindly to his emails going unanswered. I don't anticipate him having any tolerance for Scientology trying to throw its weight around the way that it does while pretending like it's not doing it. For the last 20 and 27 years, respectively, the city manager and the city attorney positions have been filled by people who, although were extremely competent at their jobs, they were not exactly agents of change. They were very good at maintaining the status quo, and the status quo has its place. And the fact that they were so good at that is why they were able to stay in their jobs for 20 and 27 years, respectively. For the first time in over a generation, in just the last 2-week period, the city of Clearwater has selected a new city attorney and now a new city manager. I feel we now have 2 people in these positions who are very capable and very willing to be agents of change. I believe Clearwater will win the war Scientology is waging against it. And I will be running for city council to help make sure that happens. The earliest date papers can be filed to start the campaigns is September 16th. That is when I'll be filing my paperwork. Once that is done, I will be letting everybody know who's interested in helping out in any way how they can help my campaign. Thank you to everyone who watched until the very end, and thank you to all the new subscribers recently. I hope you're enjoying the content on this channel, and I hope you stick with me for the ride. The campaign season is going to last for 6 months. I'm going to be letting you guys know every single day for the next 6 months what is happening on this campaign. It is going to be a very aggressive, in-your-face campaign, rubbing Scientology's face in the fact that not only can they not get any of their own members elected to the city council, there's not a damn thing they can do to keep me from getting elected either. We are going to keep showing the world every single day that Scientology is a small, desperate, failing, corrupt organization. Stop treating them like they're something special and treat them like what they are, a criminal organization. We need city leaders who know it. We need city leaders who will say it. And in fact, I don't think we have any use for city leaders who don't know it and won't say it. All right, that's all I got for now. Thanks again. Talk to you guys soon. Bye. I want to give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Dream Realty. Oh wait, that's me. I've been a real estate investor for over 20 years. I bought my first investment property when I was 20 years old. For the last 15 years, I've been buying and selling my own properties all over Clearwater and Tampa Bay. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home and you'd like to work with me, get in touch and I'll get it done for you. Thanks again to everyone who supports this channel, and thank you for watching.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.